Hi, this is Scott, Kilo Sierra 6 Delta Alpha Yankee, also WRTI 407, since we're talking GMRS today. And for today's video, we're going to be revisiting an old friend, the Wouxun KG-935 Golf. Now, the reason for this is I'm getting ready to kick off an operator series on this and wanted to do kind of a quick refresher. And it's something that I haven't done yet, but I know I've seen other review channels in this industry as well as others where they sometimes do a second look on a review that they've done. And there's a number of reasons why. Sometimes it might be to clear up some stuff, or maybe the product has disappointed them over the past year or so that they've been using them. In some cases, and that's the case here, the radio is just so damn good you want to talk about it a little bit more and do a little bit more with it. And also, this serves to kind of get everybody on the same page in terms of what I'm going to be doing for the next few days in releasing operator series videos on this radio. So the history on this radio, I got this last summer of 22, and it's been about a year since I did the review on this, fully comprehensive review. I'm not going to relitigate all of that stuff and start taking everything apart and giving you all the specs. I did that in the review. If you're interested, I definitely recommend you check that out. Nothing has changed in terms of my opinions there. Now, I sort of summed up that review by saying that, in my estimation at that point in time, this was the best GMRS HT that you could buy. And a year later, that has not changed. Yeah, this is the GMRS HT that I recommend. Now, having said that, I have had, every time I do a 935 Golf video, invariably I will have someone say, well, I prefer the KG UV9 Golf. Okay, that's fine. I love the KG UV9 Papa. And this is effectively a UV9 Golf because this has been Mars modded, so this will do GMRS as well as the ham radio stuff. And I will say, yeah, this is a badass radio. In fact, this radio is the one that goes into my everyday carry bag and travels anytime I go out of town, going back and forth to work. This is a radio that goes with me because this is going to be my communications device, and it's one of my more versatile communication devices that I own. I love this radio. So if you're a fan of the UV9 Golf, terrific. You made a good choice. Excellent radio. I will say, though, I played with both. While I don't own a UV9 Golf, I've played with the UV9 Golf, I believe the PX with the dark display. I still like, for pure GMRS purposes, the 935 Golf. But let me show you the difference. Let me give you the graphical scale here. I'm going to do a real high-tech graph for you. So here's our graph, right? So here's our line here. This is the KG UV9 Papa or UV9 Golf. This is where it rests in the world. This is where the UV9 or the KG-935 Golf goes. Right about there. About 2 notches up. They're almost neck and neck. They're just as good as each other. I just happen, like I say, to like the 935 Golf a little bit more. It trips a couple of extra triggers in my head. You can't go wrong with either radio. And I'll even throw in the KG S88 Golf. When it comes to GMRS, the best radios being made for GMRS are made by Wouxun. Plain and simple. The XS20 Golf, I did a video on that also. It's a mobile rig. I have one of those. I have no complaints whatsoever about kind of anything Wouxun makes. They're excellent brand. And when it comes to GMRS, they sort of own the market. They're more expensive though. They're in the mid 100s. They anywhere from $130 to $170. That's where all these radios sort out. And I am fully aware that there's a giant market of radios out there made by companies like Baofeng, Redivis, Radioddity, that specialize in radios that are sub $50, often in the $30 to $35 range. And a lot of people are content to live there in terms of GMRS. And they make a lot of equivocations and they make a lot of excuses for that. Not a lot of them make a heck of a lot of sense. My favorite is, well, it's disposable. If I lose it or it breaks, I'm not out that much money. Well, I've never lost a radio, and I've done some stuff that could have broken radios, but because they were well built, they didn't break. But more importantly, if your radio is viewed as an emergency communications device, and that may be where this channel itself sort of differs from the rest of the radio world in terms of YouTube, is I don't plan to use or field equipment in an emergency that's prone to breakage, and I definitely don't plan on losing my primary communications device. That's a mindset that I cannot identify with. So I don't field cheap gear. All the Baofeng radios that I review, I recommend they're a thing. How about that? They're a thing, and I recognize that, but I don't recommend them to anyone. Because that would be irresponsible of me to say, hey, your emergency communications are an important facet of your loadout, and you need to make sure that your radio is just as good as your rifle, just as good as your shotgun, just as good as your handgun, just as good as your optics that you have, just as good as your night vision, your helmet, your armor. And I see these people that will spend extraordinary amounts of money on that kind of equipment and then throw a $27 Baofeng radio into a pouch and call it a done deal. That is flawed thinking. That is beyond, that doesn't make any sense to me at all. So when I recommend these more expensive radios, there's a reason for it. In terms of usable gear, this is considered cheap kit to me. I have butt stocks that I have on shotguns that cost more than this radio. I have optics that cost more than a case of these radios. So when I'm able to spend $149 on a radio that does what this radio will do, I'm tickled to death. That's one hell of a bargain. So yeah, I would pay. I don't want to, but I would actually pay more for this radio than they actually charged me, because it's that good. So, okay, enough of that. Let's get to the long-term impressions of the KG-935 Golf. Yes, it's still my #1 recommended radio for people that want to get into a radio for GMRS. Now, why is that? I'm not going to go into all of the features, and I'm not going to go into all of the specifications of the radio. There's a review for that. Let me just talk about the things that have been important to me throughout the year. And the first thing is going to be the battery life. The battery life on this radio is phenomenal. Lasts a good long time. I keep 2 spares in my kit, and I also have the AA battery tray for it, battery eliminator, all of that stuff. So I can get power covered pretty effectively. The next thing I need to get, I don't have it yet, but I want to get one of the UV or the 935 Golf Plus battery has the USB-C charging on the battery, which is great that they put it there instead of like on the S88 Golf, they put it on the radio itself. So I do want to get one of those so I can have field charge capability, but the battery has really been awesome. So no complaints there whatsoever. The durability of the radio in general, this thing has taken some pretty hard knocks, but it looks none the worse for wear. It's been in the rain, it's been in the weather. I've had no issues there at all. All of this, the knobs, the controls, the buttons, all work as good as the day that I got it. And let me also put a finer point on how often I use this radio. If I don't use it daily, I use it at least every other day. And on the weekends in particular, this radio is in constant use. It is always within arm's reach, and it is on pretty much every day. But like I say, I may not necessarily transmit every day. But when it comes to transmission or reception, let me first talk about signal quality. I've had no complaints, 0 complaints whatsoever on my audio reports. Everything comes through nice and clear. The microphone on this is excellent. I've had not a single issue there. Pairing the radio up with the Nagoya NA771 Golf antenna was one of the better decisions I've ever made. This is an extraordinary antenna. This radio, in fact, is responsible for giving me my longest distance HT contact I've ever made. It was 127 miles. Now, the repeater I was hitting was at 7,575 feet. I was all the way across the Central California San Joaquin Valley on a hill about 400 foot in elevation. So there was no physical obstructions between me and the repeater antenna. I was able to open the repeater and actually hold a conversation and got a decent signal report. They said, yeah, you're perfectly readable, a little bit of hash on the signal, but you're doing fine. At 127 miles. Now, a lot of that is down to proper positioning, and I have a whole video series I did on extending the maximum achievable range of your radio by things such as positioning, elevation, clear line of sight to the antenna, etc. But I put a lot of that down to the radio and the antenna combination making that happen, and was able to receive it no problem. In fact, the signal that I was getting at 127 miles was similar. It was perfectly clear, a little bit of hash, a little bit of hiss on the signal, but just fine. In fact, it sounded a lot like a Baofeng UV5R within 30 miles of a repeater. So yeah, absolutely amazing. And when it comes to the receiver on this radio, I have to also say this radio, along with the Anytone ATD878UV and the ICOM IC-T10, have kind of disabused me of the notion that you absolutely have to have a super heterodyne receiver in an HT. This doesn't have a super heterodyne receiver. It has a direct conversion receiver, as does the ATD878UV and the ICOM IC-T10. And all three of those radios have excellent receivers and their direct conversion. You can do a direct conversion receiver that's very, very good. Not all direct conversion receivers are the chip on the board kind of gig that like a UV5R is. There is definitely a difference between them. And I have other similar radios. I'll bring these back out. Both of these radios have super heterodyne receivers. This radio receives better than this S88 Golf, and it receives better than the UV9 Papa. It genuinely does, and I was shocked by that. I've noticed, particularly in the case of the S88 Golf, I had this, so I was doing an experiment. Real quick story, I won't burden you too long. I saw a video that a guy had done on the S88 Golf, and he was complaining that he had radios, inexpensive radios, that could hear a particular repeater no problem, but the S88 Golf couldn't hear him at all. And it got me wondering, so I did a test, and this test actually happened last weekend, where I had these two radios sitting about, excuse me, about 3 feet across from each other, both on scan. And while the 935 Golf is opening for a particular repeater, every time it opened on that repeater, the S88 just blew right by. So I stopped scan and I actually dialed in that repeater on this radio, and I was hearing that repeater perfectly fine through the 935 Golf. I was not hearing it at all on the S88. So I thought, all right, maybe it's down to antennas. So I swapped the antennas. I put the 701 on the 935 and I put the 771 on the S88. Still, the situation remained. I was eventually, once I moved the radio, I was able to catch it a little bit. And in fact, I was able to kerchunk the repeater, so I was able to verify that my settings were okay. But I could barely work that repeater with this radio, even with the whip. This radio, not a problem. And I had squelch set to 1 on this radio. I don't know what that issue is. But guess what it also happened on? Happened on this one too. So I don't know. I'm not saying, I'm not throwing it out there that direct conversion receivers are better than super heterodyne receivers. What I am saying is, just saying you have a super heterodyne receiver in the radio doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be better than other radios with direct conversion receivers, just as saying that this direct conversion receiver is very, very different than the direct conversion receiver on a UV5R. So if that's your hang-up, and that's usually the reason people will cite when they say, well, I want to go with the UV9 Golf because it has a super heterodyne receiver, doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be a better receiver than this. And you're going to have to trust me on this one, but that's been my experience, at least. as far as, and one problem with direct conversion receivers that people worry about is the front end of the radio getting overloaded by a lot of RF. Never had a problem, just like I've never had the problem with the ATD 878 Anytone, and I've never had that problem with the ICT10 ICOM. I've not had that problem with this. This receiver does not get overloaded. It's fine. It's just perfectly fine. So no complaints there. So we talked signal report, excellent. Like I said, pairing it with the 771 Golf antenna, a fantastic idea. And I won't use that terminology where people, well, 771 Golf is tuned for GMRS. Hey, real quick on that. I think I covered this once before elsewhere. Any antenna that's set up for a specific band is tuned. Otherwise, it wouldn't work on that band. Even the rubber ducks on your radios are tuned. I think that's a carryover from the world of CB. You can do things to tune to a specific frequency, and when you start talking like in the ham world, when you start talking HF, there's a lot of tuning going on there. But all antennas are tuned. This is just specifically set up for the GMRS band, which is 462 to 467. Okay. I will say there's also the standard 771 antenna that's a dual band that does VHF and UHF. I have found side by side with the 771 Golf that the standard 771 works almost as well. This one works just a little bit better, just a shade better. But if you have a standard NA771 on this radio, you're still going to be fine. Don't worry about that. Let's talk about everything else. So controls, all the controls, everything working just fine. Just no complaints on anything. Finally got everything all set up how I like it, where I have my scan on the upper key here. Let's go ahead and let's kill that scan and move out. I have my little flashlight on the lower button. I think the flashlight button on long press I get Monty, but pretty simple as far as I have the layout set. One complaint I had heard, because I went and looked at the reviews or the comments on the review video, and I heard some people talking about the scans kind of slow. You know what? They actually said that it wasn't as fast as the FT60. That's almost as fast as the FT60, to be honest with you. It's not slow. It's kicking along pretty quickly. Could it be a little bit faster? Yeah. Does it need to be a little bit faster? No. Most of the time, the reason people complain, hang on just a second, got to do a cough. A lot of times people complaining about their scan rate, maybe you're scanning too large a group of channels. Now, I use the scan groups on this pretty effectively, so I'm only scanning about 70 channels, or I have 70 channels available within the first scan group, but I've even pared that down to where I'm really only scanning about, I think it's about 35 channels. That's about it. So it's rocking through pretty quick. I've not had any problems with that. Don't have any problem with it opening on scan. Sometimes radios on scan can be a little twitchy on whether or not they'll stop and open up on a particular operating channel. I've just not had that happen with this. It opens on anything that's active at the moment, so no complaints there. Everything else in terms of all the keys and everything. Let's go ahead and turn back to. Let's go to S1. Yeah, there's really not much else to talk about. But what I will say is, just again to reiterate, an excellent radio, an excellent performer, good reception, good signal report, good battery life, very rugged, very capable, weather resistant, IP66, just a great radio all the way across the board. And I still will continue to recommend this as a solid purchase as a GMRS radio, whether it's your first one or whether you're moving up from one of the lesser expensive brands. This is definitely worthy of your consideration. Now, moving forward, what will follow this is the Operator Series. In the Operator Series, the intent there is to do a deep dive into the radio of all the functions. This is for people that either have a high degree of interest in getting a 935, just got a 935 or own a 935 and want to know a little bit more about it. So the next video that I'll be doing will be relative to that, and we'll do a deep dive into all of the features and really geek out on it. So I thank you if you've gotten to this point. I thank you for watching and or listening, and I'll go ahead and bring it to a close, and hopefully you'll tune into the Operator series on that. But as a reminder, my day job is Spectre Gear, and we manufacture, amongst a lot of other things, such as slings and magazine pouches and other stuff for shooters. We also make a full line of radio pouches, so if you're interested in a pouch for this radio, or pretty much all the other ones, because we have a pretty vast selection of pouches for ham and GMRS HTs, recommend you go to spectregear.com and check that out. So I will, once again, thank you for watching and or listening. This is Scott, Kilo Sierra 6, Delta Alpha Yankee from Visalia, California, also WRTI 407. Have a wonderful day.